One of the most tender moments of my life occurred 20 years ago. This would have been 1982, when my mother died just before her 83rd birthday. The loss of a mother can be a very significant experience in life, as many of you know. As I approached Mother's Day some years later, I wrote a letter to my mother, a letter that I needed to write. I have the confidence that while it was never delivered on paper, Mother knows its content. I hope by sharing this letter, I may encourage you to write a letter to your mother on paper or in your heart. Your mother may be living, or she may have completed her earthly life. In either case, I believe she can receive it, and it is good to do so. I hope it suggests some things that need to be lifted up, need to be expressed. May it be a means of saying thank you to the one that has given us the breath of life. When Paul of Tarsus wrote to the Corinthians about love, he has some things to say that I hope can be used as the backdrop for what we write. He wrote, "Love is patient, love is kind, love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrong, but rejoices in the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends." So now to my letter. Dear Mom, it has been 20 years since you said goodbye to Ed and Mac and me as we held your hands late that afternoon at Cheshire Hospital. Life has been very different without you. I haven't been making those twice-a-month trips to Keene to see you. I am very grateful that I could be near you during the last 8 years of your life. I have good memories of our Friday afternoon drives about the countryside in southwestern New Hampshire, in your 1962 Rambler. We often stopped at your favorite soft ice cream shop on Washington Street. Don't think I have forgotten you. I think of you often. I have discovered again and again that mothers and fathers leave indelible marks on their children, marks that remain for a lifetime. I don't have the same regrets with you that I had with Dad. I often regretted not giving Dad a hug and telling him how much I loved him. But you and I had many chances to do that. Lori deserves a lot of thanks for that. Remember when you first met her? You thought my girlfriend from Ohio was much too expressive of her affection. We New Englanders were much more reserved about such things. Yet she was the one who helped us learn to express our love for each other. She wasn't so bad after all, was she, Mom? I always took your role as mother pretty much for granted, assuming that all mothers were like you. I know better now. I took your hard work and your sacrifices for granted. I know you are proud of all 3 of us sons for graduating from college and getting into good careers. I used to cringe a little when you showed your pride in my going into the ministry. I kind of kicked you in the teeth about that some years ago. I hope you understood that I needed to make that decision for myself, not just to satisfy you and Dad. I've learned from you. I always thought you and Dad were perfect. As I have grown and our children have grown up, I have discovered that you were not perfect after all. You knew that all the time, but I didn't. I knew I couldn't be a perfect parent, but I felt I should be because you were. What a place to be caught. When I discovered that you weren't always a perfect parent, it freed me up to do my best without feeling guilty if I wasn't always right. Thank goodness our youngest learned some of this early. I hope the other three have too. I got a neat letter from Kelly on my birthday a few years ago, in which she was reflecting on me as her father. She said, "My dad makes errors, as everybody does, but he doesn't pretend to be Superman, although at times I'm tempted to believe that he is. That's what I mean. I made you into Super Mother. Took me a long time to discover otherwise and let you down off that impossible pedestal. That discovery had an amazingly liberating effect for me. Mother, I wonder now as I reflect on my own growing up with you, what my children have learned from me. Have they learned the things that I wanted them to learn? Or have they learned some other things that I didn't intend? Things that may be a burden to them someday. Whatever the result, I have done my best as you did your best. We have some very special things that remind us of you, things we cherish because they were yours. Every time we use those little glass dessert dishes, there's only 3 of them now. I remember the time as a child when I ate Aunt Nettie's dessert. Really, it was an innocent mistake. I just liked that dessert. I remember being scolded. Don't worry, I can laugh about it now. When we want a special treat, I get out your recipe for scallop corn or corn fritters. These are still special treats for us. Many times you sent me home from our visits with a large container of tapioca pudding. That's still a favorite. We think of you when we enjoy it. And then I wonder, how did you manage to prepare all those good things for us during the years when you were going out to work full time? Trying to help our family have enough money for those vacations in the White Mountains, or money for us boys to go to college. How did you do it? As I looked through my Bible for a good Mother's Day text to go with this letter, I began to realize again that during the biblical era, women were treated very differently than they are now. Women were the property of their fathers or husband in those days. In spite of that, once in a while, some good mention was made of women, like Sarah, Rachel, Miriam, Ruth, and others in the Good Testament, in the Old Testament. The best mention of women in the Bible seems to center on a few mentions of Mary, the mother the mother of Jesus, and Mary and Martha, and Mary Magdalene. What I like best is that passage from Proverbs, even if it does come out of a patriarchal setting. It says some good things about wives and about you, mother. A capable wife who can find. She is far more precious than jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is always on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her happy. Her husband too, and he praises her. Many women have done excellently, but you have surpassed them all. You certainly looked well to the good of your household, mother. You worked hard. You had a deep faith. While my beliefs are different from yours, I honor you for the seriousness with which you believed and the way you took us to Grace Methodist Church every Sunday. You wouldn't let us play games on Sundays because you believed it was a violation of the Sabbath. All those things told me that your faith was important to you. There was a lot I didn't like about church in those growing up days. I remember sitting up in the balcony with the junior choir while Mr. Tibbetts preached his sermons. We were so noisy. I don't know why someone didn't punish us. The thing that struck me most was that the Bible had a very important message about love and forgiveness and peacemaking, and how people should be able to live together on this earth. Seemed like an obvious message, but people didn't seem to take it seriously. By now, you know that I have discovered that the church hasn't changed much over the years. We still say a lot of things that we don't quite believe enough to try. I would have given up a long time ago on some of this if it hadn't been for you. I remember you were a little shaken when we left the Methodist Church. I wonder what you would think about us becoming Unitarian Universalists. But then you always seemed to respect our decisions if we were serious about them. You gave us space, our freedom, and I believe you would do the same now. You were a good mom. I thank God for you. I hope you find some special pride in the growing family that remembers you fondly as mother and grandmother. I love you, your son. I have an addendum to Lloyd's sermon. We don't all remember our mothers fondly or with respect. And even if we do, we probably didn't express our complete feelings to them. I'd like to suggest an exercise each can do, whether our mother is alive or deceased. In the 1970s and 1980s, values clarification was a big thing. It was taught in schools, used in scout troops, and in growth seminars. It helped you prioritize what you valued most. It helped you grow as a person. It used exercises with series of questions such as, which would be hardest for you to accept and deal with? Number 1, loss of eyesight. Number 2, loss of your hearing. Number 3, loss of a leg or arm. You had to think, you had to choose. Its most famous proponent was Dr. Sidney B. Simon, a professor at a university in Massachusetts. I attended several of Sid's workshops on weekends and 2 that lasted for a week. The exercise I'm suggesting was one that we engaged in at one of the week-long seminars. I found it to be cathartic and extremely helpful to my mental health. Sid had us pair up with another attendee who was to do nothing except listen. We were to pretend that the other person was the person that we wanted to talk with. Mother, father, friend, someone we had unfinished business with. You can do the exercise this way with someone you trust, or you can write a letter that will never be delivered. I chose my father, who had died when I was 13. There was definitely unfinished business since I was then in my 30s, and I had never been able to interact with him as an adult. Being able to get out all the gratitude for what a good dad he had been, and all the hurt that I felt that he had left us so early, was such a relief. Give it a try. Write that letter. Tell your mother all the things you wished you had while she was here, both good and bad. I think you'll be glad you did. Thank you.